Hello everybody, welcome to a special edition of the Uncuckables. This is a morning Australian election day edition of the Uncuckables. We have Steele Archer from the Unshackled.
Hi everybody.
We have James Fox Higgins from the Rational Rise, and we have a very special guest. We have Senator Fraser Anning. Welcome, Fraser Anning.
Yeah, g'day, thanks, Dave. Great to be on your show again.
Thank you for making the time. We really appreciate it. Whereabouts are you now, and what are your plans for this morning? Whereabouts are you going?
Well, we've been to Warwick, and now we're back in Toowoomba. Just been to the polling booth with our candidate there, Perry Adrilius, and then in about another 15 minutes, we'll be heading to Ipswich for our candidate to say good day to him there at the polling booth and talk to some of the people. So yeah, we've been pretty busy. We haven't stopped travelling for the last month, so it'll be good when it's all over.
Yeah, beautiful.
Any eggs so far, I wonder?
Sorry?
Any eggs on the trail today so far?
No eggs, luckily.
Excellent.
I think they're saving them for Morrison.
yeah. Well, it's only fair, right?
I think so. I've taken one for the boys, and Morrison can take one and maybe even shorten.
Does this prove that perhaps you have a harder head than Scott Morrison?
Maybe I think they had a hard boiled one for him because it didn't seem to want to break.
I've suggested never send a woman to do a man's job. Actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good one.
That's hate speech, brother. That's hate speech.
You don't want to get caught for that.
So, what's the feeling, just in terms of the kind of feedback you've been getting from voters, constituents? How do you see yourself going today? How do you rate your chances?
Well, it was always going to be a really long shot because we've been registered for 42 days and we only had 10 days to try and put a team together, and in that time we got a Senate team in every state and the territories, and we got lower house seats covered in most of the states, but only 5 or 6 here and there. But in Queensland we have 30 and 5 Senate candidates, so we're giving it the best go we can for the time that we had. So how do I think I go? I don't know. We're getting quite a lot of support from the construction industry and also from the mining industry, which are normally traditionally Labor voters, but I think that they're a little bit disappointed in what Mr. Shorten's told them he's going to do, which is, double the cost of electricity and bring in more illegal or refugees and then attack our elderly. So there's quite a lot of things there that they're not very happy with, and I think there's quite a few of them who are going to bleed from the Labor Party.
The energy
That's
around
a good group
campaign.
to capture.
It is.
Go on,
Well,
Sam.
we're for the getting people back to work again. And the Labor Party used to be a great party, and I think they've lost their way a lot now. But with our infrastructure projects that we want to get going, the dams and watering the inland and drought-proofing the country, and other infrastructure projects, more mines, more coal-fired power stations to bring the cost of power down. We should have the cheapest power in the world, not the most expensive. And here we are shutting down power stations, and he's promising to close coal mines. Well, there's 30,000 men there that are going to be out of work, men and women. So I think they see us as a better alternative, some of them.
So the energy around your campaign isn't just online, because I just read an article from the ABC which said that Fraser Anning has the largest energy online of almost everyone apart from Jackie Lambie. But I work, I'm just a worker, and I hear that I go on the street and I say to people, who are you voting for and all this sort of stuff. Even in Victoria, some people say, and this is Victoria, this is, they say, I like what Fraser's talking about because power prices are way too high. We have no car industry, all our industry's been shipped off. We don't have any major projects. I actually like what Anning's talking about, but I wouldn't, they don't say it. They talk about it behind the shuttered doors, but then they go out and they say, oh, I'm voting Liberal or I'm voting Labor. It's a taboo topic, but there is an energy there. It's a silent majority. It's a silent sort of silent wish.
We'll call it the Anning Avalanche.
Thank you. Yes, Steele, look, you're right. We've lost all our industry. We can get it back. And look, Donald Trump has said that he'll... you've seen what he's done there. He's protected their industry, and we have to do that again. They call it a level playing field. It's anything but level. It's basically they've shipped all our manufacturing offshore. Just by the way, when we bought our T-shirts and our polo shirts and our caps and our pins, we wanted them all built here in Australia, made in Australia, which was fair. The only thing we couldn't get made in Australia is the cap. Unfortunately, they don't make them here anymore. We tried 30 different people, and I mean, somebody may, but we couldn't find any. So that's the only thing that we have to bring in, and it's a pity that we can't even make a baseball cap in the country. So we have to get them back, and the way to do it is put tariffs on that protect our industries, protect our wages for our workers, and keep everyone working and get more people back to work.
And it's a national security issue as well, because when you ship off all your skills, all your talent, all the machines, you can't produce indigenous weapons. We can't produce fighter aircraft. We can't produce tanks. We can't even produce the bloody paints that go on tanks. You can't produce tires. We can't actually be a self-sustaining military nation, even though we're on an island and we should be the best in the world at that. You know, it's a national security issue as well.
Yeah, you're right. Also, the other thing that's worrying us, Steele, is that we're now shipping off our beef and our milk and a lot of our other produce. Now, what people don't understand, I guess a lot of people, they're not seeing the problem, but you know, when they're paying $200 a kilo for beef and $40 a litre for milk, because it's all been shipped to China, and they may send us some of the rubbish back, but I was a mustering pilot when I was a kid, and younger, and I was mustering all the Gulf and the Peninsula in aircraft, and one of the beautiful big places up there is a place called Esmeralda. Now Esmeralda has 35,000 beautiful cattle, and now that 4 or 5 days ago that was bought by the Chinese. You know exactly where all that beef's going to go. It's not going to go here. It's going to go to the shelves in the supermarkets in China. So that's going to become a problem. If eventually, you know, more and more is shipped off, as it's being done now, then obviously the price has got to go up because we'll have less and less here. So they're things that, our industry's gone, and now, our food's going to go as well. And it's the Australian people who are going to cop it there.
One of the issues that you're talking about, Senator Anning, that no one else with a decent platform seems to be talking about as well, is the banking cartels. And one of your policies is to create a state-controlled bank. And I think a lot of libertarians are terrified of that idea. But there are examples in the past where it's worked very well. What can you tell us about that plan?
Well, it worked extremely well. We built the Snowy scheme with a bank owned by the Australian people. We fought 2 world wars and were quite successful there, and that was all funded by our original Commonwealth Bank. By putting it into private hands, if it had been an open market, fine, but it's not. It's a quadropoly. So basically, you've given 4 people the right to control our banking system, and they've done a terrible job of it. They've robbed the Australian people. That's why we got the Royal Commission up, and if I do get back in, if I'm lucky enough to get back in, I'll be pushing for a real Royal Commission. That was a whitewash. They out of 10,323 people who submitted their problems, only less than 30 were heard. So that was a joke. We really do have to have a real Royal Commission. The last Royal Commission into institutionalised abuse of children, they listened to over 6,000 people, and that's why we really have to reopen that, bring the banks to account, and plus the receivers, the liquidators, the administrators, and the agents, because they're just basically they're criminals.
On the subject of banks, when Maddie and I met you last week, we spoke to Rita, who's one of your Victorian candidates. We were really impressed by the quality of the candidates that have put their hand up for you. I've also been really impressed by the fact that we seem to be getting people who've never been involved in politics in their lives and have just got really interested and really concerned about Australia the last few years and have been just putting their hands up and saying, hey, we've got to do something. Have you found that replicated across Australia?
Absolutely, yeah. That was David, I'm sure. But
Yes.
David, it's exactly what's happening. The people who are putting their hands up are real people. They've worked all their life. They're not career politicians. There's cattlemen. There's engineers. We have two engineers standing for us in Victoria, and one of them is in the top 0.5% in the world in his field. And they're brilliant people, and they have children, and they're worried about Australia. They don't need the job. 85% of the people I sit in that room with have never had a real job in their life in the Senate, and I think about the same in the lower house. Really, they're career politicians. They do some fairy degree, basket weaving or arts or something like that. Who knows what their bloody degree is? And then they get room for the job, and they sit in there for the next 30 years and take their money and then take a good pension. So we need real people who've actually worked in the workforce, and we've been very, very lucky to get those people to put their hand up.
Well, a lot of these politicians, they just get trained in the art of rhetoric. And when someone like you comes along and starts speaking uncomfortable facts, they just melt down. They just don't know how to handle a dialectical conversation, and they fall apart. And we need them out. We need real people who are interested in speaking the truth, even if it hurts a little bit now. We've got to tear the Band-Aid off.
And if you're bloody George Christensen, you don't even stay in Australia.
Yeah, well, he's actually one of the better ones, But
yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, we do need people that want their job for for what it's supposed to be for, not just for a job. I've been very fortunate. We have great guys like Peter Manuel down in South Australia, and David over there in Western Australia, David Archibald. They're in number one on the Senate ticket, and they're getting a lot of support. We're realists. The likelihood of getting people in is very, very, is a bit slim, but it's a start. And if we can get a couple in there on the crossbench, then Shorten and Morrison will have to, whoever is, going to be, is going to have to come and talk to me, and we can then start pushing for what we need.
Nice. Anning Avalanche. I'm calling it Anning Avalanche.
Well, I think I've got to say, I think your party has a pulse on the heart of the Australian people. Like when you look at the candidates from the major parties who have been disendorsed for saying things on social media, particularly about Islam. Like you look at the XYZ page, or you look at your social media pages, this is what we're talking about all the time. These are the actual issues that we're raising. So you have people for the major parties who are trying to raise these issues, and they're getting kicked out of the major parties. This is actually what actually matters to real Australians.
Yeah, you're right, and that's all our freedom of speech, and since when in Australia can't you voice your opinions? We're not outrageous, and people say, "Oh, I know you're radical right wing." I said, "Well, I'm just a normal conservative." I mean, in Menzies' day, I was probably a little bit soft compared with some, So that was how Australia was built, and everyone's been brainwashed with the political correctness for so bloody long that they're scared to say what they think. And luckily now, I think you're right. There's a fairly a bit of a movement, a groundswell, if you like. And people are starting to come out of the woodwork, and I hope enough of them come out of the woodwork so we can get some people in there and start turning this place around, get away from this socialist agenda.
I'll tell you where you really connected with me, Fraser Anning, because you would know where I'm from. I'm born up in Atherton, up in the Tablelands. So it's God's country up there. So when you started talking about the white farmers who are building farms in Dimbula and stuff, that really resonated with me, because I know that whole area. I know Mareeba really well, and Atherton and Tolga and that whole area up there. So that's really good, because you don't hear politicians who know local areas, and I know you know a lot more of the national constituencies, like in their parts. But that really hit me. I was like, yes, he knows where I'm from. He knows the how important these areas are, and how much life we can bring into this country with some of these areas.
Yeah, you're right, Steele. I had 500 calves in the shed up there a long time back when I was very young. We were trying to restock a cattle place out near Richmond, and the only way we could do it was by buying the calves, the young dairy calves that they used to knock on the head. In those days, they once the cow had the calf, they didn't need the calf; they just needed the milk. So we used to buy the calves and we had them in the shed, and then we'd rear them there on milk until they were about 2 months old, and then we'd ship them out to the cattle place. But yeah, I know that area very well up there, and it's a beautiful spot, as you said. And plus, I had the Babinda Hotel for a lot of years, and my brother's still in the Babinda Hotel.
Oh, no.
Is that where you learnt the slap?
I'm sure we learned a lot more.
Had a lot rougher pubs than that one.
Yeah.
In our life, and you know, there are some rough pubs, and because I borrowed a lot of money to buy them, you couldn't afford security, so we had to do it, you know, myself. My wife's actually than I am.
So we're getting messages that we have to wrap it up from Boston.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Follow the trail.
Cool. We'll call it a day. I've heard that 97% of climate scientists reckon you're a shoo-in. So good luck for tonight, Senator.
That'd be good. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Hopefully,
Good luck. Yeah.
You're very
God
welcome.
bless.
You're gonna win.
Kick ass.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
easy. You've won. It's easy.
We'll see you in the Senate.
Okay. I hope.
All right. Thank
All
you.
the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. I think they're hanging up.
See you guys.
Cheerio, everybody.
It's getting serious now.
See ya.
Okay.
Are we going to roll on or?
Oh, we can roll on for a few more minutes if you guys like. We've got a few people in the chat.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right, so everyone, that was Fraser Anning.
Yeah.
And that was
There he
something, wasn't
goes.
it?
What a gun.
Yeah.
They still got the camera going. Oh, here we go. Hey.
Now I'm giant.
How did we like that in the chat? What did we think? What are they saying in the chat?
Yeah, I think they were pretty impressed. Yeah. It's been good being able to develop like a little bit of a relationship with Anning and his camp over the last couple of months. Like, he's used to, talking to us and that sort of stuff. I hope people appreciate, we're blowing smoke up his nose a little bit. He's on our side, but like we're actually trying to ask him like serious policy questions rather than trying to ask gotcha questions. So
we knew it was going to be a rush today. It's the he's on the trail, but there are some good comments coming through. Just saying says if Anning doesn't get in, it will be a black pill, and I think if that's how it goes, that's fine. We just have to deal with that because it will actually accelerate the way things are getting worse in this country if we don't have voices like Anning's in the Senate. And acceleration is another path to solutions. It will wake up more people to the problems, and all it means is that the left and the cowards and the fence sitters will be kicking the can down the road, and the next candidate who's representing the far right will be a much harder bastard than Fraser Anning, and probably have much more reprehensible policies, and we'll need them at that point. So it's either Anning now and people like him now holding the balance of power, or it's just going to get worse, and that's okay too.
yeah.
But where is this country going though? Like, we can't say anything anymore. We have no free speech. There is no conservative politicians. I mean, the amount of liberal politicians and Labor that just they say anything. Like, what was it the other day? They said something like, you can't say you're going to hell anymore out of the Bible. Fired, just straight away. Just fired.
Oh,
So,
Israel Folau is going to go down in history as one of those turning points, because this is the point now where the sporting world has been encroached upon by social justice narratives and political correctness to the extreme. The religious persecution of Christians has begun at the high institutional level in Australia. Israel won't be the last to be fired for his orthodox Christian views, and so down that rabbit hole we go.
This was a liberal politician.
What's that, sorry?
This was another one. This was a liberal politician who said this.
Oh, right.
And
Sorry.
he was banged.
yeah.
He was just wiped off the thing and said, "Oh, well, you can't say that anymore."
Yeah.
So we have no conservatives.
Yes.
There's literally not a conservative. Like, Anning's right. There's the far left. There's being the Greens and the Socialist Alliance and all that crap. You've got the left. You've got Labor. Then you've got the centre left. You've got Liberal.
Yep.
And then you got nothing.
Yes.
It's just an empty wasteland of crap.
Yeah. it's not like even, oh, hey, vote for the Liberal Party because at least then we'll have some conservatives, or at least even we'll have protection for freedom of speech. Like, the Liberal Party are talking about jailing people for 5 years for being trolls on the internet, which is very conveniently vague. Yeah, like they're the least worst.
Where this leads is that at the moment, we're just calling for freedom of speech, which is a return to that neutral position of everyone is allowed to voice their opinion equally, right? But what we're going to continue to see is that the left don't give a damn about freedom of speech. They don't give a damn about our freedom. They're tyrants, and that we will have to become tyrants and actually infringe on their freedom of speech. We'll have to drop that universal value and just go, you know what? Since you won't agree to freedom of speech and you won't compromise with us on that, then let's all agree no freedom of speech, and your speech is banned, and we will be the ones throwing you out of the country, throwing you in jail. You know, it'll just turn around and become very, very hostile and inverted against them. And again, if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. But right now, you know, they think Fraser Anning's a bad guy. You know, like they know nothing, Jon Snow. He is a softie compared to what's coming down the road.
Yeah, all I can say is chopper, 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 chopper.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the thing is like Sophie York, who's the Ozcons. She's an Ozcons candidate in Sydney. And she was in Sydney at the Opera House, right out the front of the Opera House, and she was actually making a video on free speech. You know, you're making a video on free speech. Obviously, this is going to make it more ironic, but it could have been a video of anything. This was a proper campaign. She had a proper camera crew there and everything. Well, not proper, but pretty good. You can see the video online. She's there. She's doing the thing. She's talking about it. And what happens? A security guard comes up to her and says, "Have you got a permit to speak here?" Literally, he says, "Have you got a permit to speak here?" And she said,
"It's a meme."
No, I don't have a permit to speak here. He said, "Oh, I need a permit. I need your permit. I need you to go and call head blah blah blah." So then she does it. She cucks, like she's very nice and everything, but she goes, "Oh, okay." And she toddles inside. She stands on the phone. She wastes like an hour on the phone with these people. These people say, "We have no idea what you're talking about. Why would you need a permit?" All this sort of stuff.
Something along the lines of, "Hey, it's a free country."
Yeah. It's like Sharia law all over again. Remember the Lakemba? You couldn't go in there, and now it's like you can't even speak on the front steps of
the Sydney Opera House.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you know, the thing is, if we were in a country that respected our right to bear arms, you'd just tap the pistol on your hip and say, "There's my permit."
Like America.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's
right. And that's the thing is, those freedom of speech and the right to bear arms are so necessarily linked. And, you know, they've disarmed us in this country. And of course, freedom of speech is going to be the next thing to go because we've got no means to defend our freedom of speech.
That's your strongest weapon, isn't it?
Actually, people in the comments section are actually correcting like some of what actually happened. Apparently, like the security guard came up and said, "We want to see your papers."
Yes, welcome to the Soviet Socialist Republic of Australia, people.
Yeah.
This is probably the last election where political solutions are remotely possible, I'd say. So I hope people vote wisely today because it's going to make a big difference to our future and our children.
Yeah, frankly, I don't think the centre can hold. We're seeing in Victoria, like we saw what the ABC are loving to boast about calling it the Dan slide. Basically, we've just had like full spectrum dominance by the left in Victoria and just complete brainwashing. Add that to the demographic displacement that's going on. I'm actually seriously concerned about previously safe Liberal seats in Melbourne. And so you've basically got the centre going further and further to the left, and then you've got the reaction of people who are like, "Hey, what is actually going on?" And as things get more and more out of hand, like people are going, people start actually questioning democracy itself.
Conserving what?
Which is fair enough.
Because like the left is like this big churning machine that gets faster and faster, but progressivism always speeds up.
Yes.
So those guys are speeding up. They're getting more and more crazy. And the conservatives are just grasping at sort of saying, "We're trying to conserve." And the only thing they have left to conserve is the right to make money. That's it. If you think about it, they're like, "Leave us alone and we'll make money." Or I'm a conservative. Like I have, and that's why all these liberal Democrats and these liberals and these libertarians, they're all coming along and they're all like, all right, we don't care about freedom of speech. We don't care about anything. Just let's leave our capitalism alone.
Yeah.
And they're part of the problem.
I actually make the argument that you can't actually have a free market without conservative values, because once you let go of those conservative values, you replace those like actual values with just shifting values of being nice, and so you're always having to like if you always have to like level the playing field. You always have to look at who is a minority, who is like on the fringe and that sort of stuff, and always basically give them free stuff. Like you replace like just clear-headed thinking with socialism. Like you either have a free market and strong conservative values. You let one of them go, and like if it's either one's going to go down the drain. Strong conservative values as well. Like people sort of talk about, like what happens. Strong conservative values helped to provide a social safety net in a free market as well, because it means that families look after each other, churches look after the poor, all that sort of stuff. So that doesn't mean that you just have a dystopia where like you have like just some people just slipping through the cracks. Conservative values means that the poor get looked after, the sick get looked after.
Yeah,
the
personal responsibility.
Yes.
Not looking for the state to be your parent and manage every affair of your personal life.
That's
So
right.
So
and then you're free
responsibility
to make
and
money, and then you're just free to make money.
The way real conservative societies are supposed to work is the individual himself is supposed to be strong, and then he's supposed to lead a household, and then the household is strong and looks after each other, and then they help their neighbor, and then that neighbor and them help a street, and then the street helps a town, and then the town helps other towns in the region, and then the region helps other regions, which fall under
Fractal man.
it's supposed to
all
work
connected,
from the
dude.
individual up, right? That's how it's supposed to be. And
that's
you're
right.
supposed to have the church, and you're supposed to have charities, and you're supposed to have a bunch of values and a bunch of systems in place that work from the individual to the families helping each other, to the street, to the street help.
Grassroots solutions instead of top-down solutions.
To a whole super state.
And
up the top.
unfortunately, that's a kind of libertarian. It's sort of a libertarian position in a way, but what we're seeing is that as the left are increasing their totalitarian power, the necessary reaction is going to be right-wing totalitarian power. And the more they don't compromise and meet us in the reasonable center, the more we have to harden and what's the word that they use? We have to radicalize. We have to get, just as they have. I mean, the radical left is overrepresented in our government at every level, and the radical right is only just waking up from its slumber. They have no idea the monster they're creating by spinning the bullshit that they do about people like Anning. It's an exciting time to be alive. Hey, I got to check out, guys. I got to go vote. I got to go vote one for the Conservative Nationals. So have a great election day. I'll see you tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah, I say let's call it, and we'll save it for this evening. There'll be plenty to talk about tonight. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. See you guys. Yeah. Good
Thanks,
stuff.
Dave.
See you, Steele.
Brilliant.
See you, Dave. See you, Tim.
Cheers.
The Uncuckables.